So this is the story of how, when I was 17, I passed out in traffic school. At the time, I didn't really know what traffic school was supposed to be. Now I do. It's supposed to be fucking terrifying. And it is, sometimes, if you're squeamish. I'd been to traffic school 2 years before this, when I was 15. And that wasn't like a disciplinary traffic school, it was like a prerequisite to getting your learner's permit. Class full of 15 and 16-year-olds, and I just remember it being tedious. Except that the tedium was compounded by this instructor we had who, he was like this tall, like a tiny guy, but just seemed dangerously caffeinated. There was that kind of vicarious embarrassment of when someone is talking about, when they're way more passionate about what they're talking about than anyone in the room could ever be. And then it got awkward because we were going through that driver's manual with all the, and he found out after a few minutes of the class that maybe a third of the class didn't have like the strongest grip of English, and means of remedying that was to mime everything. So what do you do when you have to parallel park at the top of a hill in the middle of a rainstorm? And it was particularly bad because the scenarios in that parking section just get increasingly elaborate, and he kept having to rise to the occasion. Parallel park at the top of a hill in the middle of a rainstorm, and you got a trunk full of rabbits. So when I was 17 and I had to go to traffic school again, so fast forward 2 years later, and I'm 17 years old, and I get pulled over because I'm driving like I'm 17 years old. Like 5 days before Christmas that I ended up going to traffic school. And it was an evening session, and the instructor comes in, and a tall guy with a thick Cuban accent and Coke bottle glasses. Every step he takes, every word he speaks, because you can tell he's done this a million times before, but nonetheless he manages to seem engaged. So he goes to the podium and he tells us, the class is supposed to be 4 hours long, and he does one of these, 5 days until Christmas. So he makes a deal with us that we will forego that 30-minute intermission, and we'll just get out 30 minutes early. And then he maps out what we're going to be doing for the duration of the class. First, he's going to give a little lecture about highway fatalities and statistics and shit. And then we're going to watch 2 videos. He doesn't tell us about the videos, he just says, we're going to watch 2 videos. So he proceeds through his lecture, and it's fine, whatever, he's engaging, he's animated. Then he puts on the first of the 2 videos. So the first video was just tedious, but also grueling in that I couldn't, it was like a very serious story being told by a guy who had been drinking and driving, and then he crashed and he sustained some terrible head injury, and now he could never, he can't remember where he left his wallet. So that was grueling. The video ends, it was only like 20 minutes. And then the guy comes back in, he's going to put in the second movie, and I'm thinking, fuck, this one's going to be just as tedious, just as embarrassing. I'm going to try not to laugh, but whatever. We're nearing the end, we're almost out. So he comes in with a red case, a red VHS case. He takes out the tape, and he says, now we're going to watch Red Alert 3. But so he goes, and he goes to put the tape in the VCR. If you grew up with a VCR, you remember that when you would push the tape into the VCR, you'd push it like a little more than halfway, and then the VCR would sort of suck it in the rest of the way. He pushes Red Alert 3 just to that point, and then he stops and he pulls it back out. And he turns to us and he says, Red is for blood. And then the movie starts. And I remember the first shot was it was a close-up of that guy, I forget his name, he's associated with the California Highway Patrol, I guess it's spokesperson. He's standing in front of the camera, and he is just so not camera savvy. And you can see his eyes scanning the cue card. Do you think driving is a joke? Well, stop it! And right away I was thinking, this is going to be worse. And then it cuts to, the camera is facing down at a guy. He's laying in the street with his eyes closed, pretending to be dead. And the camera starts panning up, so you start seeing more and more of his body. And again, I was like, oh my god, this is so cheesy, this is so cheesy. And then it pans up, and you see that his legs are splayed in like a V. And then it goes up a little further, and then you see that his feet are turned in toward his groin. And I thought, this is a very flexible man. Turns out he was not a flexible man. Turns out It was an actual footage of an actual dude lying dead in the road with his legs severed at the knee and turned upward toward his groin. Someone had just sort of... This is the universal gesture for hit by a car. So yeah, dude was fucking dead. It started to dawn on me, and I was looking around, and nobody seems bothered by it, but I'm crazy fucking squeamish. Then it cuts to these two people in a room. It's a female police officer and some dude who runs the show. And they're looking at this big screen on which they keep projecting footage of just people lying dead in car wrecks, scathing about it. Like, the guy projected on the screen between them, and the guy will say to the officer, oh, tell us about this fucking idiot. Just these horrible, scathing things, and like, he's saying this about dead people. This video montage of corpses hanging out the sides of cars, brains on the side, and everyone is in the room is like... And meanwhile, I'm like, this is traffic school? I try not to look at it. While I keep hearing the comment, like I'll glance up and I'll be like, oh, the headrest is out on the pavement. No, that's the head. Catching these peripheral glimpses of what's going on, and I'm like, it's getting to me, and I'm starting to feel light. The guy next to me, I'm like, this movie's supposed to be 15 minutes, right? He's like, yeah. I said, how much time has gone by? He says, I don't know, like 10 minutes. I said, no, we've been here for at least a fortnight. Finally, I look up at one of the last scenes, and it's footage of a 16-year-old girl who was driving, and there was a head-on collision, and the steering wheel went into her mouth and like gave her like a Joker smile. I just stood up and I walked out into the lobby. Our instructor was there at the counter, and he was filling out our certificates. And I go, and I go and I sit down, and the guy behind the teacher says, you feeling okay? I said, yeah, fine. And then I had my head between my knees, and then I just pitched forward, and I fell out of the chair, and I just passed out in the lobby. And I remember I woke up, I don't know, 4 or 5 seconds later, and the instructor behind the desk hadn't moved. Like, he hadn't even stood up. Like, not even a... Oh, are you okay? So eventually, like, I sit up, and I've got, the carpet imprint on my face, and he looks at me and he says, are you okay? And I said, yeah, I'm fine. And he says, maybe we go home. Yeah, it was a miserable experience at traffic school. Passed out, but because I passed out, we got out early, so...